Action! The still motion team is out here in Boston, and we are filming a promo piece. We thought it'd be really cool to do a tutorial while we're actually putting this film together. So what we're going to do is try and stop at different moments and take you through the thought process in lens choice and composition. What we really want to get across with lens choice is that focal length doesn't just equal field of view. In other words, when we put on a lens, we're changing a lot more than just how much or how little it sees. And we hope to kind of give you some examples of how we're using choices to further our storytelling through focal length and lens choice. And when it comes to composition, there's so many different layers and elements that go into that. Ideally, that's also building off what you're trying to say in your shot. What you're going to notice is that all of our lens choices are going to be primes today. That's not to say that zooms aren't great lenses and don't have many great uses. But for us, we believe that when we go out with a set of primes, it forces us to place ourselves in the environment before something happens. We need to think about where the light is, where we're going to be, what angles we want to shoot at, and what we want this shot to say. So ideally, by having several different focal lengths, we're pushing ourselves to pre-visualize more and know exactly what we're trying to say as soon as we walk into the room.
We're here with Meg, and she is taking the boxes in after we shot UPS dropping them off, and she's going to be opening them. And what we want to do here is use the slider to track along the knife as she comes and opens the box. Now we've got a 24 on so that we can really feel the motion of the slider using a wider lens, and it's also going to get us a nice shallow depth of field being 24-1.4 so we can really focus the viewer in on the knife cutting the box open. In terms of composition, the one issue we have is that we have the power being run right behind the table, and if we're not careful, it can really be a distracting element. So what we're going to do is place the bar in the top upper third line, and then we're going to balance that with where she's cutting and put that in the lower third line so we can take a distracting element and instead use it to actually balance out our frame. By also putting her cutting the box at the bottom third, we're leaving room for her hand so that we're not actually cutting it off. Headroom, in a sense, for the action that's happening. So, ready to do this?
Yep.
Okay, so go ahead. So now I can't really see anymore, so I just slowly keep moving at the same speed. She's going to rotate the box, and there we go.
So here we're getting set up to get a shot of Tony coming into the gear room getting some lenses. For that, we're set up a really cool slider shot where we're going to slide through these lenses as he picks them up. A lot of times for slider shots, we use something really wide, like a 14 or a 24. Now for this, we didn't want to go with that because we don't want to tie in too much of the gear room. We want to focus really just on the lenses and Tony himself. So for this shot, we're going to use a 35. By doing that, we get just enough of Tony and the lenses and not too much of the foreground or the background.
In a minute, we're going to have Mike sit down with one of their customers and walk them through some camera basics. So for this section, we're going to try and shoot with a 35 versus using a longer lens like a 135 because we really want you to feel like you're there with them. My ideal composition would be the camera in the center in focus, and then Mike and her behind out of focus. We kind of had this triangle going on with the focus being the camera because that's what's kind of bringing them together, and then them balanced in the frame behind out of focus kind of show that equal relationship going back and forth.
Which is the same color temperature of daylight.
Oh, okay. So we're here at Mike's desk covering him talking on the phone with some customers. For that, we're going to use a 50mm as opposed to a 135 so that we can give him some space and then also tie in some of the foreground and really get him in his element at his desk. We're also framing him long-sided looking into the frame, which makes it feel optimistic versus short-sided where it would create tension, and that's not something we want to convey when the customers call.
Here's a glimpse of what goes into putting together a commercial film in a very real-life setting. Throughout this film, we've used mostly the 24, 35, and 50, as opposed to longer lenses like a 70-200 or a 135. Now we're using shorter focal lengths and shooting in close because we really want to pull them out of the frame. We're playing off the exaggeration here to convey a sense of intimacy and make you feel like you're there with them. That really fits with how they work with their customers and how they work with each other. We could have just as easily shot with a 135 from further away, but the compression and the depth of field would have isolated us more and made us feel like we were outside looking in. I hope you've enjoyed hearing some of the thought that goes into our lens choice and compositional choices. Check out the CDLC for some other great content.